And welcome to Radio Echad, South Florida's premier radio station, where we have fantastic shiurim and amazing music. I'm here in the studio with my dear friend Lucas, and we'd like to thank DJ Shak for once again inviting us to have a fantastic class on this week's Parsha, the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Pekudei. Today's class is being sponsored by DJ Shak, Lilu Nishmas, Yishai ben Miriam, as well as Lilu Nishmas, Rumia Basada, Yeche ben Mori Yehoshua Nagar, as well as Miriam Batchana, Evod ben Nisim Mo'alam, and also for Refuah and Atzlacha, Yitzchak ben Yechia, Yonam bas Miriam, as well as Oded ben Yitzchak. All of them should have tremendous aliyah for what it is, and it is indeed our great pleasure to be here for another fantastic week. We'd like to share with you a short Dvar Torah, but this Dvar Torah is an amazing one because big things come in small packages. And how do we know that? This week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, B'Tzalel, 11, 12, or even, according to some opinions, 13 years old, tasked with the mission to build a Makom of Hashras HaShechina, the place where Hashem's glory will come down into this world in a small little compound, if you will. After this Chet of the Egel Azov, the golden calf, that was the place that Hashem said, if you want to bring a kapara, that is the place that it should be done, in this Mishkan, in this small place, V'shachanti b'seicham, and I will dwell in it, or them. It will be a place that every single person will be able to have a focal point to focus in on this place. B'Tzalel, at the young age, was tasked with this idea, and Moshe Rabbeinu had to concur with what B'Tzalel said. So much so that when B'Tzalel and Moshe Rabbeinu had a disagreement, Hashem went with B'Tzalel's opinion, now that Moshe Rabbeinu. And what we see from this is a very fundamental lesson, says the Zera Shimshon. The Gemara Nedarim Daf Lamed Ches tells us that when a person understands what Moshe Rabbeinu did, that he was an usher, a wealthy man, he was a chacham, a wise man, he was a gibor, he was someone who was very powerful. And because he had those three elements, he was the one that was tasked with Vayakam Moshe. Moshe actually put up the Mishkan literally. It wasn't a figure of speech. He literally picked up the Mishkan and he put it up. As the Zera Shimshon, one second. Moshe Rabbeinu, we know, was a very tall man. Presumably, he was also strong too, unless you want to say he was not. So why does the Gemara have to tell us? You should know Moshe Rabbeinu was a wealthy man. He was also a wise man. And he was also a strong man. Why is it necessary for him to be strong? If anything, the Mishkan was a miracle upon miracles. The stones that were represented on the breastplate, on the Chesed Mishpat of the Kohen Gadol, they literally came flying in from heaven. They literally were deposited every single day. People had mun, the heavenly bread, at their doorstep. We're talking about miracles upon miracles that are transpiring almost every single moment. The Jews were in the clouds of glory, or it was fire at night. The people had the Be'er Shel Miriam, they had the well of Miriam. People's clothing literally grew together with them. They didn't have any dust, they didn't have any stench. It was just an amazing period for all the people who were there at that time. And now they're building the Mishkan, and miracles are transpiring literally every moment. So you're telling me Moshe Rabbeinu has to be a Gibar? He has to be someone who's strong? Why is that? Says the Zera Shimshon, an unbelievable lesson, and that is, a lot of times, Hashem, when he wants to do a miracle, he'll minimize the miracle as much as possible. Because if you were to see, let's say, somebody who was of average height, and they were to jump, let's say, 30 feet, you'd say, that's a straight-up miracle. That makes no sense. But if you see somebody who is of average height, and they jump a little more than the average person, you don't think that's a miracle. You think that, okay, the person's athletic, or they have some unique ability that no one else has. It's not really, I would say, a miracle. It's just something extraordinary, something that's unique. It's not something that is a straight-up miracle. So whenever Hashem tries to do a miracle, he tries to clothe it in whatever is called ordinary, what we would call teva, the nature of things. He wants to clothe it in that as much as possible, so that way it minimizes the miracle so people could function. Because if people see something that is very unusual, people get spooked out from it, and people will not react properly, and it sort of wrecks the entire fabric of society. Therefore, Hashem tries as much as possible to make it within the confines of what we call normalcy, something which is normal, and we would understand that it's proper. Therefore, says Zera Shimshon, the following. Moshe Rabbeinu being very wealthy, people understand why he's coming to the Mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu being somebody who's very smart, we understand why he's coming to the Mishkan. He's giving advice. And now we have to say he's also a very strong person. Why? Because if we were to say he's a very tall and very thin, very lean person, and he's putting up the Mishkan, that is a serious miracle. Instead, we have to say, most probably, is it a miracle? Yeah, I'm sure it's a miracle, but you should just know also, the fact is, he was able to put it up. Could it be that it was extraordinary strength? Maybe, maybe not. But already the fact that you have had doubt and you think maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was strong enough to put that up, that is a very powerful lesson, which is that even in a small thing, you could have a very big result. But it has to be something there. There has to be something that looks a little small, but from that little small thing, Hashem will play off of that. It's very well known that the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to tell people all the time when they would come to him and ask him for a blessing, they wanted to win the lottery. So the joke is that one person asked Lubavitcher Rebbe, can I win the lottery? And the guy right next to him said, I literally was going to ask him the same thing. And Lubavitcher Rebbe was like laughing. It's like, you could both win. That's not necessarily a contradiction. He said, but the key is, you have to make yourself a vessel. You have to make yourself a small thing. You have to make something of a repository that you're able to give forth from that tremendous blessing that you'll be able to have to give forth to others. Because otherwise, it could ruin you. I like to give the example. If you were to imagine, let's say you were to take this plastic cup over here, and you were to say, I want to fill it up with water. So you take some water, pour it in. Okay, very nice. You have water's being contained in the vessel. Very good. You could give it to whoever you want. That's fantastic. But if I were to take the same plastic cup and go to Niagara Falls and stick my hand into the falls, the rapids, as they're going, I would either get swept in, I'll almost definitely lose the cup. Why? Because although you have the receptacle, it's not enough for such a tremendous stream of blessing that just comes rushing in. Person will get inundated, they won't know what to do. And you don't have to go far. You could just Google for how many people who won the lottery, how much they rue the day that they had that ticket, because they were not prepared at all for what was to come when they became very famous and now infamous from the results of their winnings. And you have to understand, you have to make yourself a little bit of a kli kibul, make yourself a little bit of a vessel, and then everything goes out from there. Big things come from small packages, and you have to make yourself something that you're a repository for that great bracha. This is a very cool fact, but I don't know, Lucas, if you know this, but there is a young player that he always dreamed of being a soccer player when he was young. And his coach one time pulled him over and says, come here, I need to speak to you. He says, yes. He's like, do you really believe you're going to be the next big thing in soccer? He says, yes, I absolutely do believe that. I said, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but that's not going to be the case. Why are you saying that? He said, well, you're too short. And Lionel looked directly at his coach and says, so what if I'm short? That means I'm closer to the ball. And Lionel Messi, who despite the fact that he is short in stature, I would venture to say he's probably one of the wealthiest soccer players. Probably Cristiano Ronaldo is probably the only one that rivals him. But he's definitely one of the richest soccer players on planet Earth. He's short. Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. He was a receptacle that he made, and he worked on himself over and over and over again. And Hashem, God blessed him that he was able to work on that. That little bit that he had, he kept on going there. Can you imagine if he didn't go further? I don't know. It would be a tragedy in a way for all soccer fans. They wouldn't have their favorite player to be playing. Who knows what? But he understood that he's a receptacle. He's somebody that from a little bit, he can work off of that. We all have that. Everyone has unique talents, and we have unique strengths that no one else has. God put us here for a purpose. He put us here to make the world a great place, and everyone has something that can function in this world. The proof is you're here today. So if you're here today, there's a meaning and purpose for why you are here. You have a mission, you have a script, you need to follow that to make this world an awesome place. That's why God put you down here. And you have to recognize that. Everyone has something, but they have to recognize it has to be within the framework of being quote unquote normal. It has to be within the framework of you're doing something. From small things come great packages. I want to share with you a fantastic story. There's a Jew in Miami Beach who is a very, very unbelievable person. Rabbi Shwed. I used to learn with him B'Chavrusa when I was learning the Miami Beach Kollel, and he told me this story. He said that he's one of the few families that he knows of that his mother and all of his siblings, when they escaped from Hungary, they were all able to get out of the war alive. He says, why? He says, it was a result of my mother. He said, why? He says he remembers that one time his mother and him and his siblings, they were walking on the countryside, and they heard the planes flying over their head. And as the planes were zipping right by, they heard They had tremendous crashes. And they hear that bombs are getting dropped all over the place. And they were worried that maybe they would get hit too. So a number of people told them, don't travel on the road, because if you travel on the road, they may mistake you for being Nazi officers or people fleeing and pretending that they're quote-unquote civilians, and they're just going to bomb you if they see you. So try as much as possible to get off the road. So they're off the road. The pilots realized that, and then they would just see if there was an area with a lot of fields of people rummaging through it, they would drop bombs there. And he says he was walking with his mother and his siblings through this area, and suddenly they heard the whistle of literally a bomb going, and the mother realized that they were about to have a direct hit. He says he doesn't know what happened. He says, all I can tell you is it was a miracle in the merit of my mother. He says, as they suddenly felt like a bomb was about to go off near them, her mother quickly grabbed all the kids around her, and she gathered them all together and says, stay next to me. She gathered all the kids together, and she said she was a small lady, diminutive in stature, but she grabbed all of her kids and literally towered over them, he said. As they heard a bomb go off literally like 20, 30 feet from them, boom. And he said he felt the shrapnel whizzing right by him. Not one of them got hit. He says, although my mother was a small lady, her stature was so great. She was literally like a force field for us. He says, I always thought about that the merit of my mother, although she was small in height, but she was the one that protected our family. And you have to recognize that you too are like that for your family as well. You could be the protective barrier for bad things coming to the family, but you're stopping that from happening. You have to recognize that you're that small thing, but a big package is coming from you. You are that person that's going to protect your family no matter what. No matter how, quote unquote, small and insignificant you are, you're not. The biggest proof of being small and insignificant and making a big deal is look at precious diamonds, look at gold, look at silver. Even in a minute amount, how great that is. You should never, ever give that up and say, oh, it's just, what do you mean it's just that? That's a very, very important thing. And the problem is our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, sometimes gets us to think, really? You did all this and this? It's so insignificant in the eyes of Hashem. No, it's not. It is very significant. Imagine somebody had a massive diamond. They're like, what is it anyways? It's like, it's teeny. The answer is, it's a big deal. You have to recognize that too. The things that you do on this world are indestructible. That's the diamond for the currency for the next world. That's what's going to get you to where you need to be. So that's the same thing as well. Moshe Rabbeinu, he comes to the Mishkan, he comes to this place, and he's saying to himself, what could I do? Hashem says, I want you to put up the Mishkan. I want to put up the Mishkan. This is a massive undertaking. How could I do it? But you know what? I could do it. Why? Because Hashem already gave me the Gibor. He already gave me the Gvura. He gave me that merit that I'm already, quote unquote, strong. Within the confines of what's called normalcy, I'm able to do something. So it's the same thing too. We have time. We have brains. We have innovations. We have ways we could articulate things. We all have missions that we feel that we must undertake or do. Everyone has something that they can contribute to this world, and just do your little bit. Your little bit can make a very big difference. They say a story, there was a man one time, he was walking along the ocean, and as he's walking along the ocean, he was picking up all of these seashells that had, mollusks or something underneath it. He was picking them and throwing them into the ocean. So somebody walked him and said, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? He said, I'm saving all these seashells that are going to eventually die, but if they're not in the water, they're gonna die. So I have to throw them back. He says, sir, you do realize there's like probably millions of them? He says, yeah, I know that. He picks up another one, throws it into the water. He says, so then why are you doing it? He says, why am I doing it? He throws another one in. You know why I'm doing it? Picks up a third one, goes, because for this one, it makes a difference. And that's why I'm doing it. And he throws the third one in. You never know, that little bit that you do, that extra effort that you do, makes a world of a difference. You think it's insignificant, but how significant that is. I'll never forget. There was, to me, one of the most powerful videos I have seen in my life is the following. There was a man who, he was a righteous Gentile, and to great risk to himself and his family, he took in a number of Jewish nationals and he hired them to work for him during World War II. And he protected them so that when the Nazis came and said, we need to round up some Jews, he says, you can't, I need them for my production. He didn't need them. All he did was he saved a couple hundred. He tried as much as he could to expand his operations. and he had them working for him. A certain talk show host invited this person to come, and this person was sitting with his wife in the crowd. There's a whole crowd of people, and the talk show host said, "We have a little bit of a surprise for you." He says, "Yes." He says, "Do you know where any of those people are that you saved? Do you know where they are today?" I said, "I have absolutely no idea." He says, "Okay. All those people who were saved by this person, you're in the crowd right now. Please stand up." Now, the person, him and his wife, who did the saving, they were on the first row. So they had no idea what was about to happen. Suddenly you hear the entire crowd behind him standing up. He looks around. He looks on both sides. You see him start to choke up. He literally saved the entire room. The entire audience was what he saved. And their family members. All from one person. Does it make a difference? Yes, it does. For that person, it does. Throw it back into the ocean. You never know that kind word that you say to someone, although it's small and insignificant, you never know how far that will carry someone. Did you know that there was a very holy Jew? His name was Reb Sender Gross. Reb Sender Gross, who the Hebrew Academy in Miami Beach is named after, the Alexander Gross Hebrew Academy. He was an unbelievable leader in the Jewish community, and tragically he passed away. And he had on his suit, when he passed away, he had on him, when they took it out, the Chevra Kadisha, when they took out all his notes, they had an old crumpled letter that looked like it was creased multiple times because he obviously read it. And that was from a young boy, Willie Leff, now known as Harav Zev Leff, a massive Rav in Rosh Hashiva in Moshe Matisyahu, massive Talmid Chacham, an unbelievable person. He was a Rav for a number of years here in South Florida. Then he made Aliyah, and he's a big Marbitz Torah in Eretz Yisrael right now. And Hashem should be Marach Yom Ushnaisav. And he wrote to Reb Sender Gross. When Reb Sender Gross said, "I'm sorry, Willie, we don't have room for you," he says, "Let me write to you the following. I need to have a Jewish education. You must let me in. Please, I'm begging of you." And he used to hold that note and remind himself, one child, look at the difference that made. One child went to a Jewish education. Look what that did. How that changed the trajectory not only of this child, but for future generations, not just his family, for all of his students. One child. You can make a difference in someone's life. A kind word, a thoughtful remark, giving tzedakah, learning for someone, just being awesome, being amazing. Small things can make a very big impact. Never, ever, ever think that it's like that. The March of Dimes is another fantastic example. Just for a few dimes, you have people that are raising millions of dollars for children who, unfortunately, at that time, it was to fight polio. And now it's for other illnesses that need to be fought against. For a couple of dimes, the answer is yes. Yes. Pushkas all around. People have pushkas that they give. They give money. You have no idea how much money that raises. There's a website. I've told this to people too. You should do it too. dailygiving.org. I make nothing other than the fact that I have fellow Jews that are being a part of this, that every single day you are giving to tzedakah across the entire gamut of Judaism. You're supporting them. Diversify your portfolio. It's $1. Really? $1? You can't give $1? Does it really hurt you that much? $1. And you realize it's automatic. You don't even think twice about it, and you're making a difference. They're up to, I think, close to $20,000 a day to different tzedakahs. Imagine a tzedakah organization, you and 19 other plus thousand people gave to that organization. Unbelievable, just from $1. Everyone could do that. You learn one Mishnayos, one Daf Yomi. You can know Shas. You can know the entire anchor of our learning just from one page a day. These are such easy, simple things. The problem is we go macro, we don't go micro. That's how Hashem operates. He operates micro, and that, I believe, that's the tie-in to the Mishkan. The Mishkan was a microcosm of the entire universe and everything. And Hashem said, I'm going to squeeze myself in a little itty-bitty little place over there to show you it's micro, a little tiny space. But you got to do it with Gibor. You have to have something there. There has to be a basis, and move off of that. Push off of that. Use that. If you have talent or whatever it may be, utilize that. That's Hashem's gift to you to make the world a better place. So that could be an idea that we said when we started off the class, which is that from this tiny little bit that Hashem gifted you, He's doing it within the framework of what's called normal, and he wants you to work off of that. My blessing to every single one of you is that this should be the time, as we're getting closer and closer to Pesach. Pesach is a time when we recognize we want to be free people. How do you become a free person? You become a free person by learning Torah, doing His mitzvahs, doing Hashem's will. There's no greater feeling than knowing that you're doing the right thing. You're making the world a better, brighter place. So my blessing to you is that Hashem should bless all of you, that when you decide upon yourself you're going to do that, that little bit is going to make a tremendous difference, because indeed, big things come from small packages. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos to all.